Hello everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. Today we are going to make some sourdough discard recipes, and we're also going to make a beautiful bread pudding out of this gorgeous sourdough loaf that I made yesterday. I usually don't use sourdough discard to make other recipes with outside of bread. I try to make, when I'm in the flow of sourdough bread making, I try to make a loaf of bread every time I discard from my sourdough starter. So for those of you that aren't familiar with sourdough or making sourdough bread, a sourdough starter looks like this. I just fed this one, so it's not super bubbly yet, but you can see in there, it's kind of a thick, pasty dough with bubbles in it. Smells nice and sour. And that is what we use to make sourdough bread with. And every couple of days or so, depending on your method for making sourdough or keeping your sourdough starter alive, you feed your sourdough starter with, in my case, I use half a cup of flour and a quarter cup of water. So the reason that you discard or throw away or get rid of in some kind of way half of your sourdough starter when you add that half a cup of flour, quarter cup of water to it to feed all the bacteria in there, is because if you didn't do that, you would end up with copious amounts of starter that you probably wouldn't be able to use. So what a lot of people do is make recipes, other recipes using that discard. And so that's what we're gonna do today. What I normally do with my discard is just make a loaf of bread. When I'm in the flow of making sourdough bread, like I am right now, I tend to make a loaf of bread every day with that discard from the morning, which is when I feed my sourdough starter. I decided that I was going to experiment with a couple of discard recipes because they look really good. So my favorite sourdough bread recipe book is this Artisan Sourdough Made Simple. So the first chapter or so is all about just simple everyday sourdough bread. And then she goes into a little bit more complex recipes, and she has a section in here for discard. And the recipe that we're gonna do two recipes out of here today. But the first one we're going to do is the cinnamon sugar sourdough waffles. And we're going to use my wood Cookstove to make these waffles on my antique waffle maker. It's a little bit of an art form using both the wood Cookstove and this particular waffle maker to make waffles. But every time we've done it, we all agree that the waffles taste better than any other waffle you'll ever eat. So I thought I would do a small batch of these waffles. And if you do have this book, the recipe is on page 148. And we're also going to make some crackers, which I have not done before. I've never made sourdough crackers before. So I'm gonna use the base. Let me see if I can find it. Puffed sourdough crackers. And these have cheese and thyme in them. And I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm just gonna make a plain cracker. I might add a little bit of cheddar cheese to them, but we're gonna give those a try. And there's a couple other recipes in here. We'll see if we have time to do today. I started making bread. This was just an experiment with a sourdough starter that was only 2.5, 3 days old. And that's the earliest I've ever tried making bread out of a starter before. And it wasn't at that point super bubbly and active, but it did make a decent loaf of bread. The second loaf of bread that I made day before yesterday was even bigger. The rise was even better. And then this is what I got on, I think, day 5 of that starter. So normally it takes around 7 days to get a starter really active, but I guess we have some good wild yeasts floating around in here in my kitchen, probably because I do so much baking in here. So needless to say, we're gonna turn this into a delicious bread pudding. And the bread pudding recipe is out of the Little Mountain Ranch family cookbook, which is now back in stock in both the United States and Canada, and we have opened up for international shipping. The shipping rates will just be adjusted for you based on where you live off of the website. If you have any issues, because we have had a few issues with it saying it's out of stock if you're international, just send us an email at info@littlemountainranch.com and we'll get that straightened out for you. But it's on page 134, the bread pudding recipe. Let's start with making the waffles because my stove is nice and hot right now and I have the waffle iron heating up over there on the stove. So I want to use that heat right now to make these waffles because we do need it nice and hot. If I didn't say this already, I usually reserve sourdough baking for winter, or like just a winter project. And I normally get started in around November, but I was really sick for November and December and didn't get started, and I'm just doing it now. My family is so happy because we all love sourdough so much. So this is my sourdough discard from this morning, and we only need a quarter cup of it for this particular recipe. So we're gonna scoop out, it's very sticky, approximately a 1/4 cup of, ooh, my goodness, this is very sticky. It's been sitting out in the open air, so it's kind of dried out just a smidge, but that's all right. Okay, into there we go. We are going to add 1 cup of milk. A little bit extra. This milk is still warm from this morning's milking. Isn't it a beautiful day outside? We have had the most beautiful mild winter I think we've ever had, with lots of sunshine over the last couple of weeks, which I'm so grateful for. I have some melted butter over here already, so we're gonna add 2 tablespoons to this. I did a nice large egg. I'm so excited because my chickens have started laying again. So nice having our fresh farm-raised eggs together really well. And this, I believe these are called Dutch whisks, and they are my favorite new whisk. I got this one fairly recently and I just love it so much. I'm gonna add a tablespoon of sugar. A little splash of vanilla. 1 cup of flour. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. A pinch of salt. And we're gonna mix this up. All mixed and ready for the waffle maker. Okay, so this is my McClary antique waffle maker, and it has this part here that goes over the element, and I have removed this part of my stove and just put that on. And then this is the waffle maker, and the way that it works is the waffles go in here. We cook it for 5 minutes on one side, and then we flip it over and cook it for 5 minutes on the other side. So I'm gonna try doing this with my olive oil sprayer here rather than using the butter. See if it's done. Looks good. It looks so good. Smells amazing. And spraying the olive oil on worked really well, which is great. I love cooking on a wood cook stove so much. I don't know what it is about it, but it's warm and cozy this time of year for sure. But it's just, I don't know, it smells good, feels good, and the food tastes amazing. Uh-oh, I overflowed that one a little bit. I was trying to get it so that it would come all the way to the sides of the waffle maker, but I put a little too much in. I couldn't resist. Trying a piece. Oh my goodness. I wish I could give you a bite of this. I truly do. It's so good. So we're going to use the time that those waffles are cooking over there to get our sourdough bread all cut up for our bread pudding. So this bread pudding recipe, I think it tastes good whether you have it, whether you make it up and you let it sit in the fridge overnight, or whether you just make it up and let it sit for an hour or so. You just want to let it sit for long enough that the egg mixture, the egg and milk mixture, can really soak into the bread. So that's all. We're going to add around 3 cups of raisins to this. You could add currants, you could add craisins, whatever you prefer, or even just plain. And I'll be honest, I actually really like it plain. But we're gonna add some raisins to this one. You want a 9 by 13 or so, give or take, baking dish. 10 cups of whole milk, 2 cups of sugar, 4 teaspoons of vanilla, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and a half a teaspoon of salt, and 12 eggs. So this is a very filling recipe. It freezes well if you want to freeze it. Okay, I better run over and check that waffle. There we go, waffle number 2. This was supposed to make 4 good sized waffles. I think with this waffle maker, it'll do 3. All right, let's check this one. Oh, look at that. 3rd time's the charm. I think it could use just another couple minutes on the bottom there. So instead of using raisins or craisins, I have decided to use dates in this because we all love dates and I think it will taste delicious. So I'm just gonna chop these up, add those in. All the bread is cut and in our tray. Okie dokie, in it goes. Okay, we need a dozen eggs. Got a double yolker here, I think. Yep. I find my older hens tend to lay double yolked eggs more frequently than my young ones do. Oh, it feels so good to be in eggs again. So you can keep your chickens laying throughout the winter if you have light in there, because what dictates or what signals to the chickens to lay their eggs is daylight hours. So when the days get really short in the winter, they stop laying and then they start laying again as soon as those daylight hours start to extend like they are right now. And there has been a few years that I've used lights to keep them laying in the winter time, but I haven't the last couple of years. And I got a couple shells in here. Now that I have a freeze dryer and I can freeze dry eggs when we have a whole bunch of them during the laying season between usually February and around August, we usually get just tons and tons and tons of eggs. I don't mind giving them a bit of a break. So we have a dozen eggs in there. We're going to add our sugar. And the recipe calls for 2 cups. I am going to be using 1.5 cups. Some vanilla, of course. Pinch of salt. 10 cups of milk. I've made this recipe enough to be able to eyeball it. Our last waffle turned out perfectly. Couple teaspoons of cinnamon, and we're just gonna whisk everything together. Over our bread it goes. I'm gonna push our bread down into it, and then we'll cover this up with tin foil and set it aside. You can put it in the fridge overnight if you like, or like I said, just let it sit for around an hour, which is what I'm gonna do today, just so that the bread can soak it up. This is really important, especially if you're using a dense bread like a sourdough. Like this. We'll tidy up our mess here and then we'll get into the crackers. Now for our crackers, and I'm just gonna use the bowl that I had my sourdough starter in already. So we only need 1/4 cup. This is a little over 1/4 cup of sourdough starter, so I might need to adjust the other ingredients to make the consistency right. Use 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of flour. So this recipe says that you can use a food processor to mix it all up, but since I have everything already in my bowl here, I'm going to just use my bowl and hope it turns out all right. We're going to use a little bit of garlic powder, 4 tablespoons of cold butter. I'm gonna add a little bit of Monterey Jack, and it has some jalapeno in it. And we need around 8 ounces or so. This is a little hard to mix by hand because of the kind of stretchy sourdough starter that's in there. I might need to pull out the food processor just to get it all mixed. Okay, so we have all this mixed together now. So it's kind of coarse, and we're gonna add cold water until we can get a dough. It's kind of very similar to making a pastry dough. We're going to add some cold water to this, just enough to get it to come together. So now I'm just kneading it together to form a dough. So we'll just cut our dough in half here. And then we're going to wrap this in some, I use Ziploc bags just because I like to reuse them, and then put them in the fridge for at least 30 minutes to chill. Oh shoot, I forgot to add the thyme to it. That's okay, I'll sprinkle a little bit on the top when I roll them out. Okay, I am in kind of a baking mood right now, so I'm gonna look and see if we can find another fun recipe to do. How about these? Oh, there's Alfred. Can you guys see him in the window over there? So Alfred will not stay in the barn or the chicken coop. I have tried. He has decided that we are his flock, and he will, even if Dan's down in the shop, he'll go stand outside of the shop door. And when I was in a membership meeting the other night, so we have a Little Mountain Ranch membership community, and I had a one-on-one call with one of our members. And while we were talking, he jumped up onto the freezer outside of my office window and was looking at me through the glass of the office, which just cracked me up because I've never seen him up there before, so he must have heard me talking. Anyway, that's adorable. Okay, so I would like to try the sourdough Zeppoles. Can you see that? Zeppoles, I think is what it is. This recipe, I don't have any ricotta cheese, but I could sour some milk and try making these with soured milk. I'll just use a little bit of vinegar to sour the milk, or maybe lemon juice we'll use in this case. And yeah, I have all the rest of the ingredients, so we'll give this a try. So these are a deep fried little donut type thing, little like a donut hole, except it says that they are lighter than a donut and similar to a sweet, airy fritter. And that is what they look like. And since we're going to be using sourdough starter again, I am going to take this bowl and reuse that. We're going to steal a little bit of this. So we need a 1/4 cup for these as well. So this isn't quite ready, but it'll be fine. So all I'm going to do to sour my milk is take my 1 cup of whole milk here, and I'm going to add a tablespoon of lemon juice. Mix that up, and then just set that aside to thicken and acidify. We need a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, 1/2 cup of starter, 2 large eggs. Okay, can you see our milk is getting all thick? Because I'm going to be deep frying these, I'm going to use my stove because I can regulate the heat a little bit better for deep frying on my stove here rather than Martha. We're gonna be using olive oil for deep frying. So we use olive oil and always have used it for everything. So the flavor of olive oil doesn't bother us. But if you're not used to olive oil for deep frying, then I would recommend using a lighter oil like an avocado oil, because olive oil does have a distinct flavor. So we want to bring up our oil to 360 degrees Fahrenheit or 185 degrees Celsius. We're gonna add our thickened milk, and you can see how there's chunks in there into here. I'm gonna whisk this together. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of sugar, a cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a pinch of salt. That seems pretty runny to me, but we'll try it and see. Now it says just to use a tablespoon to scoop this out and drop this into our hot oil. Well, they look fantastic. Let's dust these with a little icing sugar. And let's try one. Look. Yum. Very good. Exactly as described in the cookbook. They taste like a really light fritter kind of flavor. It's got me thinking about other things I could make with this, actually. I put the bread pudding in the oven, so it is baking. I'm gonna finish frying up these, and then I'll be back with you to show you the finished bread pudding, and we'll make those crackers. Alrighty, we have our bread pudding out over there. I'll show you it closer up in a second. But now we are going to roll out our cracker dough. And I'm gonna grab my thyme so we can sprinkle a little bit of thyme on here. Okay, so we're gonna sprinkle a little bit of thyme on here and roll. Dan just cut off the handle off of one of my small measuring cups because I have 3 of these and I hardly ever use them to make a cracker cutter here. Well, that's gonna work perfectly. How was the drive out?
It was so pretty.
So sunny, hey? Okay, there is our bread pudding looking delicious. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's all scooped up. Add a little bit of maple syrup on top and try a bite.
So good.
That's so good. Okay, I'm gonna get these quickly made so that I can sit down and eat some of that, and I'll show you when these are all finished. Okay, friends, I slightly overcooked the second batch of crackers, as you can see here, But I did try one. I tried one of these ones here, and they are absolutely delicious as far as the flavor. I made them with salted butter, so they didn't actually need any extra salt on them at all, so they're nice and salty. There's a few things that I would do differently next time. One is I would roll them even thinner than this, because they're not quite as thin as I like to have this style of cracker. I would also make them about twice this size. And the reason for that is because I like to have cheese and red pepper jelly or something like that on my crackers, and these are just a little bit smaller than I like, but the flavor is perfect. So I'm gonna keep working on these until I perfect this recipe, and then I'll share that with you. I also wanted to remind you that our giveaway that we're holding for 4 of our Little Mountain Ranch mugs, so there'll be 4 separate winners in this giveaway, and each of the winners will get a mug along with a Little Mountain Ranch family cookbook, and we're going to be doing that draw on February 7th. All you have to do to enter is to sign up for our newsletter. If you're already on our email list, then you're automatically entered into this giveaway, and if you would like to be, I'll put a link down in the pinned comment and in the show notes below. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.